Okay, good morning, everyone. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back. 5 to go. Parshas Bo. Parshas Bo. Things really change. Jewish people arguably become a nation in our parsha with Klal Yisrael ultimately leaving Eretz Yisrael, leaving Egypt. And it is a very exciting parsha. The last three of the Makos. Bo is Gematria 2 plus 1. 3. One of the kids was so excited last Shabbos, Friday night, to teach me that. Va'era is Vav Aleph, 6 plus 1. Okay, it's a oldie but a goodie. It never really gets old. It's just a great one. And last three Makos, first mitzvah, HaChodesh is Elochem, Kiddush HaChodesh, and the Jewish people leaving Egypt, really everything in one. The climax and the crux of the entire story of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim comes out to play in Parshas Bo this Shabbos. The Chisa es ein haaretz, v'lo yuchal l'ros es haaretz. Says the Torah regarding the Makkah of Arba. Right, Arba is not spoken about too much. It seems to be, I don't know, you tell me if I am inaccurate over here, but it seems to be like it's too high on the list. Grasshoppers, locusts? It sounds like, I don't know, Dever sounds a little bit scarier. All the animals dying. Arov, all the animals coming. Arba is like you're building up to something. And number 8 is locusts. What is so terrible about the Makkah of locusts? Usually it's very much skipped in the entire story of things. Frogs get more of a prominence at our Pesach Seder. The market for purchasing toy frogs is higher than purchasing locusts. Maybe we should bring this back. Yeah. So if you're a farmer, locust is really, really bad, right? So the simple understanding, it's not so simple, but when you understand the farming, it helps us really understand why this was so terrible. Barad knocked out all of the crops that were outside, right? That were grown. But internally, there still was some type of sapling or seed that was there. I hope the labels that I'm saying are correct. But what do locusts do? They eat under the ground and they get rid of everything. So if you take it in terms of understanding how many years back did the Makos set Mitzrayim in terms of their farming? Okay, Barat set them back probably one season, 1 year. Our bet sets them back several years, right? If Arov is disruptive to a certain degree, knocking out and all of the animals dying in Mitzrayim, then that sets them back a decade. How long? It takes years to develop animal farming and to develop, to have a whole group of animals that can help you outside, and it does so much for the land itself. This severely sets them back. What were you saying?
I said in a way it's like we need to connect with also that it's right, not appreciating what Yosef did.
Interesting. Yeah, so you're bringing it back to Yosef, that maybe the whole connection here is that Yosef planned in advance, set them up, for decades of excellence and prosperity and really dominance, seemingly, over all the other neighboring countries. And now Hashem, through the Makos, is setting them back, into the dark ages.
What they did to them.
Fascinating. The Torah says the following in regard to this Makkah. So Hashem said, Paro, says no, good. And if you're going to say no, Moshe says to Paro, if you're not going to let my people go, then I'm going to send out Arba. The Chisa es ein haaretz. It's going to cover the land. V'lo yuchal l'ros es haaretz. And you won't be able to see the land. Just like we just said, right? And it's going to eat all the other crops that were not eaten before. And it's going to eat all the trees. How long it takes years for a tree to grow? Asks many of the Mefarshim that there's a double language. The chisa es eina aretz, velo yuchal roses aretz. If you're covering the entire land, you can't see the land. No? So what's the Torah saying over here? So suggest Rav Moshe Sternbach makes the following suggestion. This question is originated by the Kli Yakar Rabbeinu Bachya. We'll see the Kli Yakar in a moment. Lefiza ha'arbe kisas in haaretz, v'gam sima einehem be'ofen shlo yachlu lir'os haaretz, v'zeu she'amar leparo v'yaser me'alai rakas hamavas hazeh. Which of the makos is Paro called death? Get rid of this one, it is like death. Arba. Why? The Mefarshim say, I think it's a Medrash, but Moshe Sternbach says, you see from here, proof for it, is that with Arba, these locusts spit out venom. And this venom blinded the eyes of many of the Egyptians. The chisas ein haaretz, they're going to cover the land. V'lo yuchal liros. Why is this so terrible? Not only is it setting them back, it's making people blind. So Paro is saying, please remove as hamavas hazeh. This is very, very bad, right? Very, very bad. The Kli Yakar says, I would say more shot-oriented, that what does it mean? V'lo yuchal l'roses haaretz is that you're taking away something simple from the people. When you can't see what you're eating, right, then you can't enjoy what you're eating. All of your senses are connected together. That's why people spend billions and probably billions of dollars in advertising to make food look so attractive. Because the more that attractive it looks, the senses are combined. It does taste better. If the presentation's better, it's the same food, but science tells us that it smells good, it tastes even better. Right? All those things are interconnected one to the other. And so what is Hashem taking away? You can't even see the food you're going to eat. It's going to be completely covered by locusts. You can't see it. You're not going to be satisfied with your food. And not being satisfied with your food is a makkah within itself. Other Mefarshim understand when Paro says, remove this maves from me. Why is this death? Because not eating food is terrible, right? Food shortages, food hunger is one of the worst things, right? It's one of the worst things that you could do to people, to starve them to death, for people not to eat food, right? What do we say? I'm working to put food on my table. That's like the basic, right? The basic thing that we say when it comes to making a parnasa. It's not about the lavish vacations or those are luxuries. We understand those are luxuries. Basics is to put food on the table. And that's something that we try to work hard for, that nobody should be lacking when it comes to food. The Egyptians understood this, and what Hashem tried to get, this makkah was so severe, it was called maves, because the Jewish people were lacking in food as a result of this. Yeah.
Also, that the Egyptians worshipped the sun. The armor covered the sun, they couldn't see it. So it was like killing their god.
Interesting. Like it was like killing their god. I never thought of that. Their sun god was called Ra, and then maybe that's why it's called Ra, because of how it was done. Very good. They covered it up. There are some Mefarshim, maybe Sebar Benel, who writes that all the Makos come to attack each one of the gods of Egypt. The Egyptians have plenty of gods, and maybe they have 9, 10, and each one of the Makos come to directly attack one of their gods, or the conception I would say the conception of their God. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe bo el Paro. Ki ani hibadachli etzli bo, v'esleiv avadav laman shisi o sasai eli b'kirbo. Hashem says to Moshe, go to Paro. There are two ways that we could say, go to Paro. Bo el Paro and Lech el Paro. So what is the difference between Bo and Lech? Bo and Lech. Suggests Rabbi Soloveitchik the following, that there are two ways that Hashem is trying to get Moshe to relate to Paro, and hopefully Paro will agree. Again, at a certain point, he said no, it's not going to change. One way is as a leader. You're going to go, Moshe, go to Paro publicly. Go when he's by the Nile. Go in the face of everybody else, in front of his servants, in front of his aides, in front of his cabinet, and speak to him and tell him, if you don't change, there are going to be more and more plagues. You're speaking to the leader in him, the leader of Egypt. This is going to be bad for you. The politics here between the Jews and the Egyptians is not going to be good in the future. You're going to lose your slaves, right? Like the whole thing, right? The PR is going to be a mess. It's going to be bad for you as a leader. Your people are going to give up on you. And we see that happening slowly in the nuances in the psukim here. That is Lech el Paro. Like, go to the concept of Paro, the conception of Paro in a public manner, and describe to him, leader to leader, what is wrong with what you're doing, and try to convince him to do. When that fails, he says to him, Bo el Paro. Go to Paro personally. Go to him. Paro is a husband. He has a family. He's a human being. He gets, hopefully he understands suffering. Go to him in his palace and try to reach out to him person to person, man to man, privately, almost like leave Aaron to the side, and let everyone else leave the room and talk to him one-on-one and see how he does. Right? Ultimately, neither of these work. Ultimately, Paro is in complete denial. Ultimately, he doesn't seemingly care about his constituents and how their lives have been completely upended as a result of the Makos. Right? This 1 year of the 10 plagues is going to, again, we said it, set them back decades and decades, if not centuries, in their leadership, power, and financial strength. Yeah.
At what point does Moshe become the great leader? It sounds like Hashem's still looking Moshe through management 101 of how to handle things every single time out. Is there any point where Moshe now becomes the great leader, the great Moshe, where he now becomes that great leader? When is that?
So hold that question. Mendy asks, when does Moshe become the great leader? So let's hold off in 1 second. I just want to add one more point to this. Because we see in Paro many parallels between Paro's disdain or ignorance, or lack of caring or empathy for the people, and the leaders that we are up against today, fighting Hamas, fighting terrorism, fighting evil. At the end of the parasha, we have Makos Bechoros. And the Torah says, right, Moshe's been 9 for 9. Truth is, he's been 18 for 18. Why is that? Because almost every single time he says when's the Makkah is going to start and when it's going to end. And his precision is there every single time. Makos Bechoros is going to happen. People now are really going to die. It's not going to be the flock. It's not going to be the crops. It's going to be people. Vayakam Paro Balayla. Paro wakes up in the middle of the night. Says Rashi, so he gets up from his bed. I need Rashi to tell me that, Paro woke up in his pajamas, right? Paro in pajamas. No, what is he saying? He's saying that Paro has not a worry in the world for any of his people. He doesn't care if anyone gets hurt. His mission is to build the pyramids. His mission is to subjugate the Jewish people, to torture them, to hurt them. He doesn't care to what cost that goes on. He's sitting in his palace. He's got his things. He's luxurious. Things are great for him. It doesn't matter to him what's happening to everybody else. So he goes to sleep that night when he knows Makos Pachoros is going to happen. Moshe now is 10 for 10. And then he wakes up and then he starts being, you know why? Because it's going to affect him personally. Sternbach says, you see from here that like the evilness of the leaders of foreign nations and how terrible they are, lack this empathy. Again, some are they don't care on any level. Mendy asks, so I think there's a pattern here within Paro, and maybe this is a pattern for all leaders that we see we are up against in our history. Mendy asked about Moshe. When do we see? When do we see that Moshe becomes like this big guy? No? Suggestion. So next expression, Vayiminu Vashem Moshe Avdo. We definitely see there, as the Jewish people are crossing the Yam Suf, when they leave the Yam Suf and they start singing Shiur Hashem, it begins with Vayiminu Vashem Moshe Avdo. So you see, that's clear that they get it, that not any random person could do this to them. That's for sure. I think we also see that Moshe was always willing to take advice from people. He was never finished learning, and he felt comfortable, and he didn't feel embarrassed to ask Hashem, ask his father-in-law Yisro, reach out to the people. Again, he probably gained more confidence throughout his life in decisions, but ultimately, he was not afraid. He was humble. But we see here the following pasuk: V'yitain Hashem eschein ha'am be'inei Mitzrayim. Right, Hashem gives the chein ha'am to the eyes of Egypt. The Egyptians now have favor in the eyes of the Jewish people. So, right, what does that mean? So this is right after Makas Choshech. So Rav Hirsch writes, what do you see here? If this was the opposite way, and the Jewish people couldn't move for 3 days and 3 nights, and it was dark for the Jewish people, but there was light for the Egyptians, what would have happened? There would have been ransacking of every one of the Jewish stores. They would have broken in the windows. They would have stole everything. What did the Jews do? Nothing. They took nothing. Only at the end, when Moshe said, you have to take, there's a promise here. Oh, before that, they took nothing. And even then, Vayesh Ilum, they asked to borrow it. That's a whole discussion. They stole it, they borrowed it. What does that mean? But they took nothing. Everything was where it was. In fact, some Mefarshim point out here is that who took the Egyptians to the bathroom? With all due respect. They couldn't move for 3 days. The Jewish people felt bad for them. And they went into their oppressors' homes. They had to look for the golden so they didn't take it. And they made sure they did their business. They even fed them, perhaps. So now the pasuk continues. Gam ha'ish Moshe gadol ma'od be'eretz Mitzrayim. Moshe is also a great person. Be'enei be'eretz Mitzrayim, to the Egyptians. Be'enei avdei Paro, to the eyes of the servants of Paro.
Let him milk.
Yeah.
Big cup.
And also Beineham. So after Makas Choshech, the Jewish people, the Egyptians, all of Mitzrayim sees and has great respect for Moshe Rabbeinu. So Rabbi Salvation writes over here, it's remarkable to note how many times Moshe and Aaron were giving an audience with Paro, the supreme leader of Egypt, despite the fact that they repeatedly reproached him. Paro had the power to execute anyone at will, yet Moshe and Aaron suffered no personal consequences. The tolerance of Paro is perhaps one of the greatest miracles of Egypt, right? That Paro could have said, kill him, murder him, get rid of him. Paro had a respect. Maybe the leaders of today do not have that respect, one-on-one. Moshe was a great and charismatic leader. It bears witness to Moshe's greatness that he made such an impression that Paro would do no harm to him. So at a certain point, the Jewish people and the Egyptians realized that there was a respect that their Paro had on Moshe Rabbeinu, that he was a great person. They had this great reverence for Moshe as a human being. What's fascinating is, and he adds to this, is that Paro himself needed to convince the people that he was not a human being and that he was a god. That's why he would only go to the bathroom in the Nile early in the morning before anybody came outside. Moshe Rabbeinu was very much a person. The Torah says, Gam ha'ish Moshe gadol me'od. The people respected Moshe not because he was superhuman, but he was very much human. They knew him. He grew up in Paro's palace. At this moment, right after Makas Choshech, between Makos 9 and 10, a lot of things happen. They have a great respect for Moshe. That's the first time we see this, that the people, right, foreign nations and the Jewish people have a great respect for him. That's to answer Mendy's question over here. What's amazing is the conversations that happen in between the Makos. So Torah says, one second. Sorry, usually I make copies of all those sheets that I have. So the Torah says the following. After Makas Arba. So Vayushav es Moshe ves Aaron el Paro. After Arba, they go back. They go back to Paro. Vayomer alehem lechu yivdu es Hashem Elokeichem miva miha hochim. So Paro says to them, go serve your God. Just send me a list. Right? My TSA agents need to know who's on the list. The FBI, the CIA, they all need to know who. Give me your list, and they can go. Vayomer Moshe, binarenu ubizkenenu nelech. Our young children and our elderly needs to go. Bibanenu uvnosenu, our boys and girls. Bitsonenu uvkarenu, our flock, our sheep need to go. Kichak Hashem lanu, because this is the chag for us. So boys, girls, men, women, young and old, all need to go. Vayomer lehem.
Does it say everybody?
What?
Or does it say everybody? Why does he have to go through this?
Everybody would be a list.
So yeah, what do you think? Why does it not say everybody?
I mean, did he leave anyone out when he's saying this? Is anybody left out?
No. Seemingly no. Vayomer lehem yichein Hashem imachem kasher ashalach eschem v'tavechem ru'u ki ra'a neged b'neichem. Lochein lechuna hagvarim ve'ivdu es Hashem. Paro responds and says, no. You know who goes? Lechuna hagvarim. Just the men. That's it. Ve'ivdu es Hashem ki osa atem v'akshem. And that's all that can go. So for Moshe and Aaron, that was a no-go. No. Vayagaresh osam me'es pnei Paro, and they Not just vayishlach osam. Send them out is like a nice thing. When you walk people out, you send them out. Okay, shalom aleichem, seischem shalom. You can leave now. Like the meal's over. Vayigaresh is you take them and you throw them out of the house. This got Paro very angry. He threw him out of the house. What do we see here? What we see here is a fundamental difference in understanding about who is in Yiddishkeit and who is not in. Who's in religion and who's not. For Paro, the Gvarim, the men, how do you celebrate a holiday? A small segment of the population in that. So a percentage of the population goes and celebrates. That's not true when it comes to the Jewish nation. It's not a holiday unless everybody joins, right? Everybody needs to be there. The Menachem Sion points out, Moshe says, Binarenu ubiskinenu, the young and the old. You would have thought he should say, Biskinenu ubinarenu, give respect to the elders. Respect your elders. Why is it the opposite? Why is it the opposite? So he
could have said just everybody, but he didn't. He had to specify.
Good, yeah. So I think he's specifying it on purpose. Many of you asked the same question, because if he didn't specify it, he knows that Paro is going to say no when all the children and all the women go. He's going to say no for sure. So he needs to specify it because, again, we're learning from here too. Who's in, who's out. In Arenu is a Canaan. We should say it's a Canaan. So number one, the Zakanim for them, they've already made it to Ziknus, and for them to leave Egypt, it's not as important. How much are they really working in Egypt? They've made it religiously. They're probably stronger. If they're still considered the Zakanim and prior to Klal Yisrael, we knew already at this point, there was a lot of assimilation. So if they made it, they don't necessarily need this as much as the younger generation. They still are highly impressionable. At a certain point in our lives, we're not as impressionable. The changes we make in growth are very important, they're very significant, but they're not night and day. As opposed to the younger generation, they're way more impressionable. And we need for them especially, they need to get out of here. They need to get out of here more than the Zakanim in many ways, because their life can completely change as a result of this. We don't know how they're going to be. We don't know what who they're going to marry, what their life is going to be like afterwards. And I think it's a very, very important point. There's an emphasis that we put on both Zakanim and the Arim in Judaism in general. In general, it's not a question. We value both. And Moshe Rabbeinu here is saying it's not a chag, it's not a holiday without bringing both to the table.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Hey, Hershon. Just one contribution on that point. I heard.
Yeah, you do not need to introduce yourself.
Thank you. That Paro, if the old people want to follow religion, that's great. But I don't want any young kids learning it.
Wait, say it again. I'm sorry.
Paro's thinking, if the old people want to keep their religion, I can live with that. But I don't want the young kids to learn something.
Oh, very good. Very good. Very, very nice shot, right? That what Jay is saying is that I don't want, so it's fine for the older people, fine. Like they're already, they're doing it. But I don't want the young kids to go. I want them for me. I want to get them. I want to get them. Look at all the Na'arim now on the college campus. We want them. We want them. Look how much we invest in the next generation. How important that is for us. The first mitzvah that Klal Yisrael receives is HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, Rosh Chodashim, Rishon Hu Lachem L'Chodshei Hashana. The mitzvah is that the month belongs to you. What does that mean? The month, quite literally, the month belongs to you, the Chodesh of Nisan. So says the Sforno here, Mikan ve'elach, yu chadashim shalachem lasos bahem, kirtzonchem in the future, time belongs to you. The mitzvah here of giving us the ability to announce when Rosh Chodesh is going to be is a mitzvah that the Jewish people are in control of our own time. Rabbi Soloveitchik takes this foreknown to tell us that really this highlights a difference between a slave and a free person. For a slave, time does not belong to them. For a free person, time is all theirs. It's what they do with their time that makes them free. The Rapam said that's the Iker Gadol, quoting here from the Torah Ladas. Haya Iker Gadol shel Yitzias Mitzrayim. Shenasenu b'nei chorin lishtamesh bizmanenu kefi ritzonenu. That we use time based on our will. You know, you tell a lot about people's values, not about what based on what they say, but based on two things: what they spend their money on, and how they spend their time, especially their free time. You can argue that a lot of the time that we have during the day is not our own time. You have to go to different, appointments. You have to pay certain bills. You have to go to, you work. You have a boss. You have to go. But then there is time that is yours. The nights, the vacations. What do we do with those weekends? What do we do with those times? Tells us a lot about the things that we value. And that's the mark of a free person. The freer we are in touch with who we are, the more, right, tells us a lot about ourselves. Or Moshe Feinstein, in a new sefer that I just got, I had a free day yesterday from teaching. So I got this sefer called Kol Ram. Kol Ram, for Moshe, I think in his lifetime, they wrote a sefer called Darash Moshe, which are Moshe Feinstein's Drashos, and Divrei Torah in the Parsha. After he passed away, they had tons of writing, tons of his writings. And they wrote this sefer, I think his grandson, Avram Fischlis, after Ramosha passed away, organized all new Divrei Torah called Kol Ram. It's recently become more popular. I saw here, I was surprised that this is the 7th printing of the Sefer, but I only recently heard of it. And it's a very, very nice Divrei Torah. It's like more like thoughts. Some of the ideas are not even complete, full ideas, like very nice thoughts that he has on the Parsha. And here he quotes Rashi. He quotes Rashi. Her'o levana b'chidusha v'amar lo Kishahayarech mischadesh yelacha rosh chodesh. Hashem showed Moshe the moon, and he said to him, when the moon becomes new, it becomes Rosh Chodesh. Ve mikra yotze midei pshuto. Al chodesh Nisan amarlo zeh rosh l'seder minyan chadasha. And which month is this about? Rashi continues. About the month of Nisan. Nisan is the first month, Iyar is the second, Sivan is the third, etc., etc. So asks for Moshe, what is the connection here between these two ideas in Rashi? Number one, that when do you say Kiddush Levana? In the beginning part of the month, when the moon is not seen as much, and you know which is the first of the month? Nisan. So it says Ramosha, what's the connection between these two ideas in Rashi? So he adds the following point, or another question, is why is the month of Nisan the first month? We also have the month of Tishrei. So what does Tishrei symbolize? And what does Nisan symbolize? So Tishrei is a creation of the world, right? Vis-a-vis the way that Hashem created the physical world itself. What's fascinating is when Hashem created the physical world, he created Adam and Chava on day 6. And when he created them, that's the first day of Tishrei. When he created them whole, as adults. Not sure exactly what age they were created, but they were adults. Since then, every other person subsequently is created as a baby, right? Person's a whole person. They're able to learn intellectually. They have a capacity to learn and understand more. When you're a baby, everything needs to go slowly, right? That's baby steps. So everything goes slowly. So says Ramosha the following. Tishrei is the beginning of the year vis-a-vis Hashem and his interaction with the worlds. But when it comes to Klal Yisrael, we begin with Nisan. Nisan is when we first were like babies. We were first a nation. That's when we became a nation itself. That's why we deal with Nisan as the Rosh Chodesh, the Rosh Hashanah for the Chodesh Elechem, Rosh Chadashim. It's the beginning. Everything is rooted in Nisan. In fact, the fact that we have 2 months of Adar this year is all rooted in this. An email is going to come out hopefully this week to maybe today. I forgot when I set it up for to remind everybody about the yurt sites for Adar Rishon and Adar Shem. It's a little bit confusing. Requires chazara every few years. So that email is coming out soon. But everything's rooted in Nisan. So suggest Rav Moshe that that's really the message of the new moon. If you were asking me, when should we say Kiddush Levana? In the what? When it's full. That's what I would think. So that's the beginning of Rashi. When Hashem says to Moshe, when do you bless the new moon? When it's still a baby. And it's still tiny. When you see a sliver of the moon. You can't see fully a sliver. It's got to be a few days in. Some Sfardim and the Vilna Gaon say 7 days after the Molad. But nonetheless, the first part of the month, when it's very much not fully there. Because we are celebrating and recognizing the potential of not just the moon, but really of us, the Jewish people, right? Us as individuals and as Klal Yisrael. That sometimes in our histories, we look like the moon. We look like that first half of the moon when it's like we're fading away. We're almost gone. Where are we going? What's happening to us? Right? That is Klal Yisrael. We're not born big and strong. Right? Through the years, we have moments and generations where we're stronger and when we're weaker. And he says that is really what's happening. Now we understand 2 understandings of Rashi. Rashi says, do it the first half of the month. And Nisan is the beginning. Nisan's the beginning and not Tishrei. Tishrei is when everything is full and done and complete. That's not who we are. We're always evolving. We're always growing as people and as a nation. Yeah.
Just imagine if God created a little planet as babies instead of being adults. How the whole world could have been different.
Could be. Who would take care of them? They'd have to.
God would take care of them. The animals could take care of them, but okay. At least they wouldn't just sit on the first day.
Okay, things would have been different. Yeah, things would have been different. Yeah. Okay, so just review for today. We began with the Mak of Arba. Why was Arba so terrible? The Chisas in Eretz, and you won't be able to see. What does that mean? They became blind, or they physically just couldn't see the ground. It was called Maves by Paro. What does that mean? Not eating food, not putting food on the table is one of the worst things. But Boel Paro versus Lechel Paro. Paro wanted to be superhuman. Moshe was trying to speak to his human side, his personal side. Paro was a non-empathic, discompassionate leader on every single level. And we very much relate to Paro's leadership, unfortunately, during these times. We understood the greatness of Moshe. When did Moshe become great? What was the Chen Ha'am? And we learned that Chodesh Zelachem, Rosh Chadashim. What's the mitzvah? The mitzvah is the time is given to us, and the mitzvah is the ability for us to grow and change and evolve. Oh, sorry, I'll add one more last point. It's beautiful. Vayisa Am es Batzeko. When the Jewish people leave Egypt from the Torah Ladas, Terem Yechmat Misha'arosam Tzuros Besimlo Sam Al Shechman. The Jewish people, when they left Egypt, what did they take out? They took the leftover food. They had leftovers from their Seder the night before. What was leftovers? It was matzah. They took over leftover dough, and it became matzah. B'nei Yisrael asu gidvar Moshe, and B'nei Yisrael did what Moshe asked them to do. Vayishalu miMitzrayim klei kesed v'klei zahav. They took out gold and silver. So the mefarshim on these psukim say the psukim are backwards. First, the pasuk says they took out the dough, which became matzah. Second, they took out the gold and silver. They took out the gold and silver, then they took out no? So simple understanding is, we want to understand why they had to hold the matzah in their hands. Because they had no other place to put it, because they were holding the gold and silver in their knapsacks. If that's true, that also doesn't make any sense. What Sternbach says, you see from here, that leftovers is a Jewish concept. What did we take out of Egypt? We took leftovers with us. He says that that's like a leftovers from a mitzvah is a Jewish concept. But here, the Ksav Sofer son, the Shevet Sofer, writes something very, very beautiful. If we were leaving Egypt, right, what do you usually take with you? You take a bag on the plane and you put something underneath the plane. So things that are very expensive, that you're afraid they might get lost, you put underneath the, right? You take that with you. Things that are replaceable, you put underneath the plane. So the Jewish people had underneath the plane, what they put there, the gold and silver. Gold and silver is worth a lot of money. Why wouldn't they hold that in their hands? Let somebody come and take it. What was more important than that? The matzah. Matzah's mitzvah. When they were leaving Egypt, what did they hold up high? Mitzvahs. They wanted to show, right? For us to be inspired by them. Right? For us to be inspired. What is truly valuable in this world? Things that don't really have value. It's the mitzvahs that we carry. It's the Mesorah, right? It's a Pesach Seder, what they had the night before. Those are things that they wanted to never forget and to always keep in their mind. The gold, the silver, okay, it's important, it's necessary, they need it, but that could be left in the stowaway. That could be left under the plate. Okay, with that, I wish everybody a wonderful
Rabbi.
Soros Tovos. Yes.
Rabbi, why is the English translation of bow